Still like, yeah.
Why are you sitting that far?
Above you guys.
Yeah, that's cute.
Doesn't feel safe. Yeah, goes there.
We have een chat, dus in de
Class 24. Yes.
What are we, what do we have? Oh, nice. It's two. We just
That's something.
J, yes. Who named this? Could have been like J is beginner, J is like a Muslim.
You can rename it.
Oh, was it you that
Open
named it?
PRs. No, no.
Okay.
It was not me, and I hate it. So yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, you can open a PR on the Agile Future repository, and you can be like, I hate this naming
Can
scheme.
we come, when we graduated, can we come back for the future class and be mentors?
Sure, yes, of
I
course.
want to teach GitHub. Git and GitHub. I'll come here and like, I don't care what the mentor said, this is the hardest subject. This is what is confusing.
Yeah, we had many people that came back for mentoring because they know what the difficulties are in the class, right? As you say.
I teach
Something
something
fun.
Okay.
Java 1 week. HTML. Oh my God, HTML.
Why should people put it together?
Do you want to do an energizer?
That was the.
The table color.
Yeah, do you like this new setup? I think it's not as
We used to be happy.
sprawled. Well, that's life, I guess. Okay. I think the energizer today will be recap of last week.
That's good.
Anyone who can remember anything? We talked about Jason, like not the Derulo guy, but
Yeah,
Jason.
we talked about JSON, we talked about API, we said a lot of
Yeah.
stuff
So what do you use Jason for?
to share.
To store data, it's a way to store.
Yeah,
To share it at some point.
yeah,
You know, the JavaScript, the more readable and more beautiful way, easier to share. Like Nikita would explain more.
But the sharing part is the API.
yeah. But what is the key part about Jason being able to share between different systems?
It's like a language between different languages.
Yeah, it's a standard, so everyone can sort of use it, right? Yes.
Not a program.
Yeah, so I did one of them.
Yeah, I remember that I said it's like, you know, you platform.
And then APIs, you've looked into that, right? During your homework? APIs? What do you use APIs for?
To
Get information, yes. Yeah. Okay, and they send you
these days.
JSON, exactly. Yes. Cool. And you've used fetched as well, right? Did it work?
Why I cannot open the homework?
Okay. I'll just take this as a yes.
Preliminary thing, just like this was the last thing last time was that just do the fetch exercise, right?
Yes.
We're gonna do like try different headers and stuff for methods, but I don't think that's great, right?
Yeah, that's true. I don't think we have that much time for that.
Yeah.
Because today we're actually going to dive into promises. And it's all about promises today. So one topic, it's a different aspect. And I think the best way to begin talking about promises is part of this burger ordering example. So who of you has ordered some food and they got this little thing that vibrates when your food is done? You know that?
Yeah.
That's basically how promises work. So you go to a food booth, you order something, and they tell you it's gonna take a while. And they give you this little device. And then they tell you when this blinks, the food is done, our promise resolves, right? And then you go back. So you don't have to wait in front of the booth until your food is done, but you can do other things, right? You can, I don't know, talk to your friends, whatever, get a drink, right? And that's basically how promises work, and it's beautifully illustrated in this article.
I'm sorry, may I add something? The Notion link that you have sent it on this in our Slack group.
You can't
Yeah,
open
that
it.
one. We cannot open
Yes,
it, and it
of
says
course.
that we should
Hang on.
create an account, and
No, you don't need to.
I did.
That was me being stupid.
I did.
Try this one. I updated it. Works. Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's a link to this burger party article. And so they even have this little example here where they use the terminology that we'll use for promises. So a promise can either be fulfilled or it can be rejected, right? And then if you're talking about your food, well, maybe the person who prepares your food screws it up, right? Then your promise will be rejected. So even if your buzzer rings and like you go there and they'll be like, oh, we burned it, sorry. Right? Then you will have to wait for another promise to resolve, or you get your next food maybe, and that will hopefully be fulfilled. So so if you think about the concept of promises, think about ordering food. It's going to help you a lot. And that basically also covers what's here in the key concept. So some operations in JavaScript are asynchronous. So they don't finish immediately. You have to wait for them. And in order to do something else while you're waiting for them, you use a promise. Because it's eventually going to get back to your code and be like, hey, we've done this thing. Now it's ready. Now you can use it. It's a bit like callbacks, right? Do you remember when we talked about callbacks and how it's a bit async and stuff like that? Set timeout. Yes. Yeah, set timeout is a bit like a promise. No, it's not technically a promise, but it's a very similar mechanism. We have this example here. And I cannot remember what it's about. I'm sorry, it's slow today. Oh yeah, right. So it shows you how you would use a promise in the real world. So in this case, we're using a promise chain, where you always start with promise.resolve, and you say then your callback function. And this first one, it doesn't do anything. It's just to make it clean so that it's all in one line, right? It will just resolve immediately and go to this function. And then you can return something that is a promise. And then in the next step, in the next then, you will get the result of that. So you might have seen examples where it's like fetch dot then results blah blah blah, right? That's exactly how this works. So fetch is returning a promise. You use the then function to get the result, and then work on the result. Let me quickly see what exercises we have and how we're going to structure the next step.
Exercise 2 is quite simple.
You mean this one?
Exercise 2.
You can see how the catch works,
Oh yeah.
as opposed to then.
Exercise 2. Fetch yes or no from the API.
You decide before.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if, do you want to dive in with an exercise immediately, or should we go a bit more about like the different rules? Basically, I've set a couple of rules for using promises so that you don't have to think about it as much. You can just follow the rules and you'll be safe, basically, right? But then later, if you understand more how they work, you can then, of course, change it to whatever you feel suits your needs.
We're not in a rush, so we can just.
Okay, let's go over the rules.
Let's get a little bit more explanation on this.
Yes.
Promise, it's a word you use for postpone some actions.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it like that. It's a mechanism to allow you to have asynchronous code in JavaScript.
In my use case, personal setting, it's almost always a API.
Yes.
We call it server and data. Or at least I'm saying.
Yeah.
But there are other use cases that I think
In that case,
that's the most common use case.
promise is data that you don't have yet, but you don't have in a short amount of time. You want to tell JavaScript what to do when it arrives, but you don't want to care about it anymore. So, when this arrives, do this.
It's just this transactions and something.
No, so as Christopher said, in the beginning, you can think about this as a mechanism to use fetch.
Yeah.
Right? So because fetch is going to be the only tool in your toolbox that uses promises. Because, we've talked about event handlers. They
do the same thing.
Yes, yeah. So once you get to SQL, you can also see how that works. But that's also on the Node.js side and not on the browser side.
Anything
But-
that takes time is a promise. Getting data from a database is going to take some milliseconds, right? At least, but you don't want to wait that because there's no need to wait for it. You can, continue building your site while that happens. Previous site JavaScript, when it arrives, do this. You know what you're going to do when it arrives, you don't want to wait for it. So basically, JavaScript is your help, your assistant, like this, when it arrives, do that.
So
That's the reason we're using this. Stopping the application from just stalling.
yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, we think we just freeze and wait for the response. And half a second or a second.
So when can do all this stuff.
Yeah. So-
Yes, precisely. Yeah, it's a very good point. So this is why it says here, right? We don't want to block other code from execution. So this, what I showed you here, it's a promise chain, as I said, and it's very clunky. This is why we have other ways of writing promises now, but sometimes we still use this, so I'm still showing it. So yeah, as always in the world of JavaScript, things are not perfect, and we'll have to adapt to that.
What times do you have to use that?
So you will see many examples that will be like fetch API, then results, do something, right?
I think when we're using React, could you start on React?
No, I think React is
After
in the
this,
future.
Ah, okay.
so you will have to be able to understand this example, right? It's also a promise chain, right? You have a promise, you have a then, and then it does something. You have seen these examples used in your homework, right? So this is where we use it, because many of the old documentation is still old, right? Still uses the old stuff. And you might also need some different setup for the other thing that is easier, and that I'm gonna show you later. Yeah, sure. Yeah, this one, you mean?
What's triggered?
So in this case, it's just done on load, because whenever the file executes, it just works on this chain, right? And you can see that when I make changes here, and the code runs again, we're going to see that this updates, right? So it takes a while for the promise to resolve. That's because I added a timeout. But that timeout would usually be your API taking a while to get back to you, right? And so to make
You start off with an empty promise. Promise of resolve first, the chain.
yes. Your question is why I do this?
I don't know if anybody else was wondering that.
No, I know it's very confusing, but I also think that the alternative is very confusing. It's
Then you'll have to start with the make perfect version.
exactly. Then you will have to start with the first function or the first promise that you're going to return. And if you do it this way, which I just picked this up when I started working on promise chains, everything is on the same level. All your promises are on the same level, are indented one.
I've never seen this. I think I like it.
Okay, yeah. Well, you don't have to do it, but you can. It's if you just resolve a promise, it doesn't do anything. Like it's resolving immediately, right? And then another rule that I would follow is never go deeper than one level, right? So you don't want to suddenly start doing it then here, right? You want to return what your promise returns and then use the next level, like the same level, but next then function to continue working on your results. And then another thing is always end your promise chain with a catch. And you can use this, like you can just copy and paste this. It's just going to console log your error. But if you don't do this, you're not catching your errors, and your errors are just going to maybe stop your script from executing, right? And in the middle of something, if your API doesn't respond to what you expected to respond, your page will just crash your JavaScript because you haven't caught the error. So you can of course also do something else here if you want to. Like you can like if error blah blah blah, then show message to user, right? But this little snippet, which you don't necessarily have to understand what it means, but it's just going to log it to your console, right?
I know that catch also usually also using, for example, you can try it first, and after function,
Yeah.
it comes to error, you write in catch error and do that.
Yes, this is the exact same mechanism. Yeah, and then the last rule is basically when you have this chain, always return a promise. Like, so you're not in doubt. Like if you were just setting the text on the box, after that, return a promise, right? Because if you're not returning something from a then function and you have the next then, it's never going to be executed. And you have to return a promise.
Like the same with if just one if works or otherwise.
Yeah, it might be the same result, but it's not the same mechanism. It's just that then only exists on promises, right? And if you're not returning a promise from the previous then, there is no then to execute, right? Because then it's going to complain that you're executing undefined, then on undefined or something like that, right?
Yeah, in the previous, you return the function.
Yes, and this function, that's true.
Returning the-
But if we look at the function, it returns a new promise.
So he's actually not returning the function, but run.
Yeah.
He's calling the.
You thought you got me. Which would have been possible, but in this case, no. Yeah. So you remember when we talked about returning functions and returning results of functions? In this case, we're returning the result of the function, which is a promise. Okay, so then there are some handy tips. Like I mentioned, you can use, how do I close this? You can use the catch console log trick. You can also use promise.all if you have multiple ones, like you can pass an array of multiple promise. Let's say you want to ask 10 different APIs for results. You don't have to do like wait for one, wait for the other. You can do promise.all and get all of them at the same time. Yeah, so that's basically the basis of promise chaining. And then if you're still paying attention for the last 5 minutes, then we get to the good stuff, because this is the async await.
Question about the sync in a way. Sometimes, for example, at my homework, I also used instead of, for example, when we fetching, I used instead of fetch something then promises, I used the await was function, and inside function I have used the fetch and the response also. So it's kind of the same, or
Yeah, it's definitely the same. It's just a different syntax, right? That's what it says here. It's a different way of writing it. And it's a way that is much more in line with other programming languages and with how you would expect this sort of thing to work. So it doesn't use any callbacks. It doesn't use then. It doesn't use any chaining. It's just, you just await whatever you waiting for.
That's what promises you get one promise.
Uh,
It's an async function to the wait, right?
It has to be an async function, yes.
So you're wrapping all the asynchronous logic into one async function you have to wait for on the root level.
Yes, that's one of the drawbacks that for a long time, browsers and Node.js didn't support top-level async await. So that means in the top of your file, you would still need to use some sort of then or something like that, right? But now they're slowly adapting, and you can, I think there might be a link somewhere here. No, apparently not. I have no idea what this is called. Nope, that's not what it's called. And it might not even be in can I use. Yeah, there we go. So now you can actually use await on the top level, but it has to be a module, your file, which is a whole different other thing that we're not talking about today, but you can try it. I mean, it certainly works. You just have to use the type module when you make the script tag in your HTML file. And so, so async await, it uses try catch, as we already talked about. You have to use async in front of all your functions to use it, like all the functions that await stuff. And under the hood, like technically it still uses promises, right? This is still working with promises. It's just a different way to do it. Yeah, and then one thing that I didn't mention is also that you can make a new promise by saying new promise, right? So as we can see here, you can create a new promise, and it takes a function that has two parameters, resolve and reject. And then when you think that the promise should resolve, you call the resolve function. And then when you think your promise should reject, you call the reject function. Make sense? And let's have a look at, before we dive into the exercises, the very last thing, let's have a look at how we translate from promise chain to async await. So let's say I have this fetch that we had before, right? How would we write this in async await?
You will start this page and after await also.
Yeah, so first of all, I need to create an async function, right? So something like this.
No, no. Just begin to-
Oh wait, this is not how it works. Sorry. Like this, right? Should I use try catch already? I can. So I say try, and then I say turn fetch, or I can just say await fetch this. Well, let's not use try for now. Just assume that this works, right? So I'm just going to be like const result equals to await fetch, and that's all. No then required. And then I can say fetch my example, and it should then execute that, right? So these two lines are the same as this. Only I personally think that this is a bit more readable. It's just sort of saying, hey, I'm awaiting this. And then when it's done, please execute the next line. But here you're saying, oh, I'm awaiting this. But in the next line, it's going to be executed immediately. Like we're not waiting for anything, but we're waiting for the promise to resolve and then execute this part, right? No, not this whole part, but these two lines, right? So instead of having this weird callback thing where it's like, okay, then I cannot, like when I'm here and I do console log result, it won't work, right? Because I'm not in the then callback. But in this case, it just works, right? There's no callback. There's nothing to take care of. Okay, let's try some exercises. Right? Questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in this case it does. So if you're using async await, it won't continue executing your code until it gets the result.
If you have a lot of functions in one assume, so you have to put the weight to every function, and it's have to wait for the function that not to execute something.
Well, only if your function is like returns a promise. Otherwise, you don't have to wait it.
What I'm asking is if you have a function, yeah, and then you have synchronized function, they just return right away.
Yeah, so here, for example, fetch is an async function, right? And we're waiting it. And then this is a synchronous function, console, so log. We don't have to wait it. But when we call this function, it already has the result that's returned from our promise, right? So we don't have to, like, we can just mix and match asynchronous and synchronous code when we use async await, where with promise chains, we can't do that. We
What's the question of if
is that answering the question?
only has synchronous function calls inside of it?
No, I think set timeout is
Yeah.
asynchronous.
Yes.
Let's say we have like a set timeout that is in that function, then there are other functions, not within the, like, just know other functions outside. Then normal synchronous management. The set timeouts will give the results after all the synchronous function finish, or when it gives the results, it returns the other.
Yeah, I mean, once it's at the timeout, everything under the synchronous start and just regular, right? But if you were to have that many synchronous calls, that, you know, it lasts more than a second, and yeah, once a second passes, the set timeout executes, and then again, synchronous start.
I think it's easy to just try it out.
Yeah. That's actually true.
I mean, when you gave an example, right, no? When you had a set timeout of 0 seconds, I mean, still that executes after.
Yeah.
synchronous stuff.
I think actually the 0 second, there is no set 0 seconds, it's always.
Yeah.
22 to those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it executes it in the next run over your program, right? Like first it goes over your program to look at the root level, and then it goes into the callbacks. Because what you're describing is set timeout. Yeah, it's an asynchronous function, but it's not this type of asynchronous function because it's not a promise, it's a callback. So we have to also distinguish these different types. Because if I have a callback, I can't just say await set timeout, right? Because set timeout doesn't return a promise. Set timeout takes a callback and then it calls that callback when it's done. But fetch, it returns a promise. So it's built to be used with async await, for example, or with then. And you can't say set timeout dot then, and then it will do something. That's because set timeout doesn't use promises. And that's why I had to wrap set timeout here into a new promise to promisify it, right? So in the callback, I call the resolve function, and that makes this call to set timeout a promise. It's very confusing. Yeah.
Or this is a confusing topic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Some of the others is basic,
But don't worry about it, you'll understand it, I'm sure of that. Because you're going to use it for fetching data, and you'll figure out what the different parts are and how they work, right? So this is also why I would suggest that we try some exercises now.
Oh, no.
You feel numb? Well, okay, I'm not sure if I can do anything about that.
I'm speechless about. No, let's just do the exercise.
Yes. And get some coffee if you want to, or tea or water. So the first exercise actually uses async await. Is it clear to you what's supposed to be done here? So you're using fetch to fetch from this API, the one that we looked at last time. And then you're using async await to do that. Make sense?
The exercise 1 and exercise 2 are basically the same thing.
Yes, but the first one uses async await,
Oh,
and the second one uses promise chains.
Also bear in mind that what you get from the API is in JSON. You have to all the result of JSON then.
Yes, correct. Okay, so I mean, you can do 1 and 2, exercise 1 and 2 at the same time, I guess. You don't have to wait. When I gave this class last time, there was sort of a, yeah, we split this in parts, but yeah, as you can see, it's all one big topic, so it doesn't really make sense to do that. Okay.
Maybe to make it a bit clearer
Yeah, sure.
that let's see which one of these actually works. Wait. Nope.
You want to use this one? Or maybe use the paper.
Oh, that's true as well.
Do you have a paper? Yeah, no. I mean, you're just gonna empty them really fast if you're using them one super.
Yeah. Maybe this one is better.
It works.
That works. Yeah. We go here, so the async await kind of thing. Like you're talking about. So it's basically that, you have some function that is, and it has to be asynchronous, right? That's important. Because it's an async function and the name, right? Async function and the name. I call it control something like that. Sorry. And in there, you can have some asynchronous function like fetch, right? So you have to await that. Like fetching the data. And oh, sorry, my bad. No, where's the thing? Don't let me confuse you further. So, we know that fetch returns data, right? Ideally. So you want to save that first. So let's say you have some let data equals to awaiting the fetch, right? But we know from last time that this data is in JSON. So you have to decode that. So you have to make a new of data, I don't know, decoded like data deck or something, let's say. And the JSONing is also a asynchronous function, right?
Yes.
So you have to await that too. I'm not writing what you have to write here, so I don't want to like use it into your mouth just like that. So the decoded, and once you have this, now you just have to now you have to do the analysis. You have to see if that data, I don't know what the structure is, but it's first it would be ideally write console log it to see what the structure of it is. But probably has some. Oh yeah, if you also just visit the site and then show you. I'll check you out the period as well.
Oh.
So this is how it looks like, right, in JSON. So it's an object that has an answer property. So you have to check if the answer is yes, right? So if answer is yes, like the data deck, the answer is something, right? Then, like that, you have to return a promise, right?
No,
You just return value.
you could show the image on the screen, whatever you want to do.
So, yeah, so here it doesn't have to be a promise.
That's all, that's returning.
But it doesn't have to be like a new promise something.
Oh, no.
Okay, so that then you have to return. It was like something. What was the task itself? Sorry.
I think the task is not very specific, but which is specific.
Log out the answer.
Yeah.
Then there was no point in this. Sorry. Then you just know that the data decode is done, and you don't even have to know what the answer is. Or I guess you do. So you just console log that. The data deck answer property, right?
So what do you say if we give it 10 minutes and then we'll see what it
Yeah, of course. And also, one more thing, keep in mind, this is just a function, so we will call it. Right, this is not in the function, it's not code. This is where the code starts, and then you have to just call the function. Like that. And the way to do promises is something that you guys already used last time, to just do that again. Yeah, so the promises, I won't write too much, I won't spoil the exercise. The promises, you just know from last time, right, that you just fetch. And then you have to use the thens. And then you always create an anonymous function where you have the data that came from the previous call. And you do something with it. And then you have to return something here, then use then again, and then again, and then again, and then do something useful without that. Yeah, that's a hint, I guess. But the async was something that you guys are not familiar with yet. Which you, so this is just undefined. No, it doesn't.
No, it's not in the final. Well, it's not.
Oh, yes and why, yes and no.
It's there.
It's random.
Ah, sorry.
The whole point of the API, you literally if you visit the actual site, like point located. Or plan it or something like that. The point is like that. You can things like the man, it's. Control click this, no? No, no, just like give it the link. Do that. Never mind. Okay, it's just when using this link. Without. Gives you a link. He doesn't play the gift, there is no little thing, but. Go from here. And so yes, yeah, you read the delivery, there's no yeah. That's the point. Yeah. Okay, so we use welcome now. Yeah, this is the classic problem because when you forgive data, you never promise how it's going. Returning data, right? Well, sure, yeah, but if you were to console log in the actual function, the get data function, then you didn't get just the data. Did you ever try that? Okay, then this is a long story. You have to explain that. So this first try. Yeah, now it's not object. Now it's the focus. It's actual object. Yeah. The reason why is because the function get data is an asynchronous function, right? So when the first gets executed, this flow gets executed, all of it. It just prints out what get data return instantly. And what get data does, I mean, it doesn't have any data yet because it takes time to clear the data. The only thing you can tell the actual, root level code, the synchronous code is that I'm gonna get something. Here's a promise. Something's going to happen, but that's the only thing that I can give you. But when you console log within the function, you only know that already awaited two synchronous calls. So you know that when that gets completed, you already waited until the fetch and the JSON is executed. Yeah, of course. What you do? I mean, this goes out data, right? What you do is, I think, it's a promise you do this, that get data, and then use a then on that. I'm pretty sure. you can do that, and then you can have the same effect. And then that goes to the data out. It is making it work. Then you should create an anonymous function like data. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. So we put in the brackets data. Yeah, perfect. And then the right console of the data. I think now we should provide the object points. Yes. Do you understand now? So basically, and get data is called on the root level, that's as soon as the page loads. And then at that point, the get data function doesn't know anything about data yet, it's just like a way to fetch. Only that then use a kind of promise, we want to get something, and we do it, but I have no idea what to do right now. What you do is just tell them, okay, well, that's fine if you don't know what it is, but when you know what it is, basically that function, that's how call that goes. So just as soon as it's ready, do that with it. Like this system, kind of like that, like doing your appointments. I don't have to care about it anymore. Just tell them, get this data and it right, just put it into the page or something like that. So we're supposed to get some data into it. And call it based on that string, you will get the data. And the reason is asynchronous is that means the fetch of that focus then it's going to be able to use the element. Because it goes to use JSON of decode. Yes, it's something like JSON parts. And then you will have to use array there. But of course, when you are changing it, there's more. Same thing, you waited, this is the same. We suppose the JSON is the same thing about the minute level message. Is that good? Okay, any other question? Okay, good. You don't like the response? You see it in the browser. Yeah, you could think that. It's not really working that way. It's actually a screen. It's not like a screen or data. It's a screen. Some data formats can't be easily placed. So you have to use the .json method. Yeah. And on the response. You already use you're not console logging.
But I didn't.
Yeah. But you might not want to choose that. Yes. By moving that one around. No problem. Let's go that the trying cache is a good thing. You don't know what that is, right? Yeah. You don't really have to try and catch it, right? Does it make sense? Okay, so that day that over this. We can keep it right now. So in terms of you get the response from. Does it log out anything? That's what this thing is. Yeah, you have to wait it because it's a. One thing you don't like this. Jason is so.
Yeah, when you're running in a node, fetch that is living in. Okay, so yeah, I think I have to run in the browser, maybe Thomas. So if you install node fetch, or should you run it in the browser?
It doesn't really matter, to be honest.
Okay.
What it really
I have never used node fetch.
So the reason why it's.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's a dying object. Okay. Makes sense.
So we can see what now is anything from now.
I remember that. You have a friend. And you were like, okay, I need a response to rush to go out there. Ah, so how can you also that?
It means that you haven't.
When the problem is. That's what.
I think we need more time.
Then.
Okay.
So then I know.
That's it?
Yeah. So you see. Yeah. I got the.
But if you go back to this one is actually not used anymore. So of the mouse, it's returning the promise. So you have to await that as well. Are using it up there. Also, there's not returning. That's maybe okay. You cannot get a result.
And now you also this response.
No,
It's the data.
you guys don't have to like that. Use that inside here because result is in the function. You just return the data.
Yeah, what is it?
And then this is a promise. So you have to use that to get the result. To get result here, it's returning a promise. So you cannot just assume that you have to wait that and then it's giving you back.
So they first evaluate this option. Then on to just provide it now get it. Get it. And then
Once you already awaited, because we remove the response.
Differences here, like I would wait for this promise, give me a result. So if you're not awaiting it, okay, so yeah, it will just come to nothing because it's not returned. It's a promise. So I should wait for the result. Also, you could also use that then instead of wait. You can just look them, yeah, yeah. So I'm not even sure if they do this in the
all the technical bits. What is
It's not working.
request, when you redirected, stated for.
That's why I think.
Exactly how you do it.
No.
But what I'm trying to show you is the response. We need to choose things.
Maybe even
Yeah, and then- And we can do it.
Often, yeah,
You have to.
progress and hey, progress.
But
that's
I make that.
Great.
I have to set in
But
a function.
But that's fine. So we get it. No. So go back to see that. So now.
We can try.
You have to do that.
First, so JavaScript.
You don't
Then
have this. And you say response like.
The only thing is when you do that, we use this one. You only want to use this example. This one's, yeah, let's go to fetch from that of the street. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, those should be good way to do it. Okay.
And as you can see down here, you could realize that you couldn't call JSON on the pending. You would have to wait first
but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Just delete this.
How does your first way make sense?
Oh, the first way? Yeah, that one.
Here.
I didn't make
Yeah,
that.
so it's actually, you're returning here. The rest you can delete that because. Now the picture.
What do you guys just have in common?
It is why return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to get the result of JSON, like the JSON event, what do you have to do?
When this first is indicated, right?
Okay, yes.
You got the post for all.
What's the thing, what is then in async await?
Oh, I'm so glad that you're normal people
It's putting away.
like that, right?
You can await
Probably.
function. The
When
same
you
way.
first runs, it accept the answer is asynchronous content. Give me those things what you got. There's like, I'm sorry. Okay, now if you run this code, try it. And with the text is going to write out the province.
What the result we have to get.
Oh, I think it's
It's the same codes. Remember, it gets paid.
It's going, how can we get it?
This one?
No, no, it's because of this, that is not here in that.
That's because it's a response. It's not the bottom of the JSON.
I want to have one.
By calling the text,
That would,
but you didn't await.
Now,
It's that.
You just have to put the one keyword in front of the text. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't make it. I just wrote it.
Yeah.
I got it from the internet. And it works, like it's exactly on the same thing that is explained.
In my mind, I know, internet is the
No, I you got really want to do that, that's the part, so I
We were just removing it as fast as we didn't mean to do.
Why did you write it?
And I will just show you that in this case, it's going to also log that you were promised in the actual data, which and what you can do then, so that you know that the fetch answer is a basic function.
To remember what the output
First, I
was.
was looking more at the what's in the
Yeah.
return. You know, it's a promise. But then, and then you say that it's fine, you know,
And that is the. Then they can't promise. You can go say.
Of those ones.
Because actually, it's actually does not work outside.
If you.
Other way.
Let's say you have set time up. Then you hover over it, it doesn't set. So then it's the way possible around. It's the rule of the game.
Now, we're going to actually
Search.
But I also need first.
Then I get When I get return.
Yeah. I don't expect you to.
When you get it, please talk about it. Then I'm going to rest.
Oh.
There we go.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I got it.
Great. That's how. Oh, yeah, actually, you can.
I want to get it, like,
Okay, you keep going, that's how to go, but then bring back the way they do it, very possible with index and also the super. Now they will. Like maybe also run it once, please. Make sure I'm not lying.
I'll try that and it'll test you.
Okay, so something that people are confused about is this, why do we have to have these two steps, right? Like, why do we first have the await fetch and then await JSON? And the reason is that when you call fetch,
I just needed to. Yeah. We're going to the browser.
it gives you a big box that's called response. And it includes all kinds of stuff, like it includes the URL that you called, it includes the status code that the server sends you, it includes header cookies, all the stuff that you get from the API. But what you want is just this tiny little bit where it says body, right? But then unfortunately the body is a stream and you can't really read a stream like you read anything else. So
It works.
to make this easier, Fetch has made on the response a method called JSON. And what this method will do is it will go to your response. It will take the body and it will pass the JSON that's in the body and it will give it to you. But remember, this JSON function is also returning a promise. So you have to await it. Does that make sense? So you have two steps. You get the response and then you get the JSON from the response. You have to unpack it like a package you get from Postcard, and then you have to get the stuff that you ordered out of it. Right?
I have a question. What's the format you get to it?
The format,
Yeah.
um,
Is it like object or?
it's a promise. It's its own type.
If you run it in browser.
It has, like now,
Yeah.
like a data, status. Yeah. Something like that.
Yes.
I don't understand why it's.
Now you can write this in promise religion from this chain.
Like that's the version. Right node, that's that version.
How would you do that? Just sit here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like that you did in the whole promise. So you didn't do that, but did you do this? Like, have you used Fetch in the last someday? But what is it coming to say? They say await. No, that. Look, use the first one. Try to go to environment page
Now, as
for
as you always get back to data. Another nine.
You do that too?
I think we'll just keep going.
It's good.
No, I'm not sure. I like it.
Call comment is happening. That's also what collections and you want to be this. So if you do, yes, we go here, you also know what this is, right? That's how you.
Because of flowers.
Thomas, do exercise number 2.
Yes, that's the keep going. And
Just do it. If you have questions, speak up.
Otherwise, the easiest way to do it.
Maybe let's try it out. This will be one, and then modify this one.
Because Brown has the edge.
Then you have both of them.
The note does not.
this, but in the.
Create promise, input set time for 4 seconds, not to be
Yeah, it's a promise. I would do that. And why is that? The reason why the books.
In now where they using
The JavaScript has said immediately that what
they will not use an image. Image is not
This function is like, I don't know what it gets you, but you have to wait to fetch every JSON. I have no idea what I will return you, but I can promise you that I'll say, return is with you. You do what you do start and you do start. Like, it'll not make you return, I need to wait. So look at the game right now, it's Sunday, and I'll return you, but yeah, that's one thing, and that's the promise. Since it's a promise, it's a fetch, right? Because we know we can do this, we know that we can go to that and just say, okay, it's a promise, and you know that you're going to do that. Then
There's another thing.
you get that one.
Needs to go.
Just take that data, please do it. Also, here, just, that's the page.
And then also it's not problem. And this should have you already told Jason.
I think it's with our space on the left.
And then that's what it is. So, anyway, this is good. This year, that also about me, right?
The news, no, as the hex, has.
By the time you get. But you wait to the patch, do the days also, but at this point, the yes, no, already is.
But actually, normally it's best to use the.
Here, some people, they said,
Yeah.
hey, when Google today.
Why are you on this?
And I don't care about that, it's made kind of, but I'm telling you, I think I can use another color. It's common.
When you're lucky, you've used the NVM.
Yeah.
Then you can even switch it.
Yes.
I had to install that because we had a.
The only thing that's ridiculous, but
Not this to.
this guy.
Then we have to use this. And but no one was going to be back to it, so we just with that package. And it's also available in Windows.
Yeah, also it's kind of better, that's the practice.
I think it's related to Mac.
Then these are promise like this, actually.
NVM is it's not very good on Windows.
Oh.
But it works.
It works better than uninstalling at least. Actually, it's actually
Better than going through the install wizard.
But it doesn't work.
all our packages not into the legacy MIC. But we just have had a package where the only problem is React out types. We just delete the React out types. We're not really used anyway that much. But,
we usually use the legacy because, well, we've used it for so many years. It's not going to suddenly break.
But we had some build tool from Microsoft that was always just in the install, and then we put it there without going changing those.
We've also been using Yarn on the projects because not because I like it that much, but because we're using monorepo. Yeah, and NPM's monorepo support is still so bad.
Yeah, but yeah, actually switching to something never see
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
No.
That's a new one.
And
And that's also because when you work on this, but the handling version. So
Yeah.
finding out what.
PNP, I think it's called, right?
Yeah. We have like 8 products, and no one is sharing it in 3 years. Finally, we got a more river.
Okay. Okay, nice. Yeah. Yeah, so the task is that you might actually check keys and you have to lock out your. There's GitHub, so anyone can see. But you're not. Or if you write it right now, when you publish it, maybe we collect your commits. And if it's an API that you pay for, or it's an API like that actually can take your private data, like an API key from which this can know that it's this like here. It's gonna be like a private message. If somebody else gets those that's key and say you have to go away from this way. It's not you. You don't have to change the figure. You have to go ahead and catch this information. Of course, you have to create it. So you can use that. So you have actually, add relations. So that can be going to solve the. Repeatedly your API realize the more we wake up, you start to let them. Yeah. That's why you get there's some this one and then you have to resolve. Yeah.
You remember this one?
Get request. Then comes on. You're going to resolve the problem. But that's your great. But this time I was because usually it's like but when you have so fine the turn on your all the basis the time just have the code that is going to read your OS.
That's the first one.
Outside.
Yes.
You have to make a prompt.
Okay, so let's assume this
usually promises.
and you want to log
If it was for new problem.
then you would do it like that. But if you want to cancel it out, you have to add a cat. Oh, yeah, no, that's the end of the chain. No, it's not there. So of the chain, like this is a chain element, then yes.
So this one
is
is that the right one? Like, should we use the way we should read the policy?
yes. No, not quite.
Today, reading a new. Then
I have been for you and looked at it and she said you should use policies and not. And this is not the way.
You do it in a way that you don't use the way
at all.
Did you remember how we use fetch? Then you do that.
It's the same way as the.
Going to the fold after one of these, you get this fold. So.
In arrow. When I talk about last.
Instead, we can.
You can do this, or you can write your own.
Then you can also check.
Okay, so then.
We
can first try this.
Okay, so you get the answer response, you wait. Yeah, then you get JSON out of it. Then you return this, right? But the problem is, right, that when you run this, it replaces the this is not possible. It's not possible. They don't get
making and then check.
Well, this is why I said maybe write your own error. Then you could also say,
possible will get answer return, which is an answer.
That time I was holding. So you have to hold the
Yeah, so you named it. And after now run this, right? David first.
Yeah, so then
error.
to the try and catch this is going to get away.
But I also know. No, I think I want to be able to see what's on the website. Of course, you do a lot of this. Because I previously used to get that. That should be. Yeah. You don't use the browser is really good at helping you.
This is
Even if you didn't
we're not returning.
the best thing. That's how you look, man. Yeah, I think that doesn't know, but you can also write it on. Like,
Creative. So you're telling. One to reject when
Like it has a callback where you have
But what was the exercise was just with
And why is the promise not actually? What you okay, when you survey that promise, you need to then you have to determine what you actually got. But it's still.
and how to use the resource.
What happened with that?
So this. Rename this
Catch error, get that console log,
getting these.
it's okay right now, so. Yeah, you can do it like this, or. It should be the kind That's what it's called.
And this.
I don't know what it is. We have no way of it. It's not. Yeah. That's what he was paid. He's also. Yeah, I think
The promise giving you.
remember that it's a callback.
It's when you're calling the function. Then you can put what's it going to do with this.
Like you need to equal us to do.
But I really have to do this.
Here, we create the function, and then we try to also take data and.
We have a problem right now. That is this.
Yeah.
You're not sharing some data.
Because it's.
On this function, it's returning. If you're not doing that, it will just run. Yeah, if you want to return it.
Yes. So if
I think if you're waiting, you're creating a new problem. Otherwise, you
just formats the no,
this is going to solve this function. You can do the same thing. And then
do console.
no, you have to call it as a function. Then it's bigger. And then inside that, you can respond. So this is a call. Yeah, yeah. So inside that.
Now you've done it. You know how to do it in asynchronous. It's not like that.
But I don't think
Like that. It shows you as an error, not as a text. That's why you should.
So
It shouldn't work.
Like,
Yes.
try, then you do whatever you want to try, then you can catch all that.
Error, not a text. That's not.
yeah, so
Error. Back to the one that I said. And don't-
you remember when you had this?
Yeah, but it's. You're with. I think it's correct. But.
And this is how you have these two lines, right? in your edit. And then you can just grab this and try catch. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, in this case, it's probably not going to catch because, yeah, it's domain actually. This is like one, but if I add,
I think that's probably all then. It was more.
Yeah.
We're selling the console lots.
I tried to lower. The lowest one, the one I always.
Right now, yes.
That's not a.
Okay, so you can see it actually says,
This space is false.
well, wait, how can I run it again? No,
Not 6,000.
Here.
oh, let's try this. Okay, it doesn't work. Wait,
Great. You make it stronger than. In more games. You do not have all.
No.
okay, so you can see that it says object error. It's just an empty error object that we're logging. And now it's red. Yeah, so you can try this if you want to.
Yeah. Wait, what? Console, yeah, it's like mine, console error. Did you write console error?
We were discussing about the difference.
Yeah, like,
Very-
if you wanted to get like a text saying, hey, this is an error, or like an actual error in red.
Like, I did it in a way that it shows you an actual error, but she did it in a way that gives you a fix that is an error.
Yes. Yeah, so console has different methods. You can call error. It's it shows it in red in most browsers.
Say, log out the error.
You could use log, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Or you did you know that you can also use console.table?
What?
Table.
Table.
Yes, so you can log out the next little table. The data.
It's like table, like table.
See? Yeah.
That's the one, right there.
Yes.
So this is how.
Yeah, okay, now. It's like.
Yeah.
It's not fully done already. This is like a different.
how you want your. Sometimes people will say. Will not show.
Oh, yeah, the line is spelling, but I didn't change it.
Most modern code is using this, right? But math out of it, yeah, that's what one of this is fine.
Not giving you. How it works.
Yeah, I see that. And the problem was the internet slow.
Do you understand why it's not in the way? The way it's.
But I just try not to understand this. So it's not very often to do this.
Take the data.
I want this to be.
And then just also forget. And see.
Yes, yeah, was good. Translating this.
Yeah.
When it's going to look like this. Creating this one.
Even here.
I think you have to. You have to wait something.
So like say, now it's.
It is.
Once I use my phone was also.
So you would make more. You said it a lot. Demonstrations, but actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain it to me then? So, yeah, so we have the thank you.
Yeah, and then I get the data in here, I do the data, and then you come here. And put it so. I said.
When you put it in the caps, how does it finish to?
Ah, no, oh, I didn't, I realized that I put that on. Yes, I remember.
So if I remove this, will it work? I will learn about it again.
Yeah, this is great.
30 minutes.
I am big now.
I'm how much is the fee? You know, it's a promise, right?
Function. You are working in functions. You should know.
Here is this all the function.
Depends on how much you.
So you won't print it here. Modify the code so it's descriptive. I'm having a lot of.
Okay, what do you think?
Also looks answers out, but without this call. So in this function also log out. the
Yeah,
answers.
the time of reading that. I meant in the console delay here.
You can see some returning console. Okay, so in the function, instead of returning it. You console log it out. In the function.
Delay between promises and promises. That's.
Above that line, yeah, that's the function.
But it's using some time,
No,
isn't it?
in the function, it's what you do. The function.
Yeah.
It does.
Yes, remove the return.
Do you want to look at the solution for like 1 and 2?
Remove the return.
Yes.
Where are the?
Yes, okay.
Okay, so let's see.
Isn't it that guy? That English guy?
Where is it?
Does it look like this for you?
That's what I meant.
So the async await version of exercise 1, did you do it like this, or did you have any other ideas? You're not done yet?
We need data from answer, because we need to receive yes or no.
That's a good point, yes. No. So this is one way how to do exercise 1. Oops.
I think Thomas is showing about.
If you're interested.
Yeah. Oh, that's my answer.
Is your answer. Cool. You did it right. Should we go through it like one by one? So you basically you don't have to use the try catch because that's only later, right? So this is all I need, like one function with 3 lines. First I fetch, and I get this. I get the big response, right? That's why I called the variable response. And then I say response.json. And this returns a promise also. And so I say await. And then I get the data. And the data looks like this. It's the JSON that the API sent us. Make sense? And then on the data, you can say, okay, I want the answer, or maybe I want the image, right? And then you have to call the function, obviously. Does that make sense?
Said the const data also returns promise. Is because of response is promise, or because of
It's because the .json function returns a promise. Yeah. It's a bit confusing because JSON.pass, it doesn't return a promise, right? We've never used async await on this one. So it's a mystery to me why the designers of this API thought that, well, maybe this should return a promise.
So you can chain it afterwards.
Yeah, and it's probably also because the body is still a stream, right? So you're streaming the response from the API.
Otherwise, I have to wait for it.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make sense, because otherwise you have to make a new promise of resolve of then and then the JSON file.
Yeah, exactly. So they save you some time and energy, and they just build it all into this JSON function. And the only price you have to pay is that it returns a promise, and you have to wait it, right?
Sorry, what is the difference between, like, when we use await response and await answer logic?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If you have const data equals await answer dot, oh, sorry, no,
Like this?
no, sorry.
You're different name for
Yes.
everyone.
Yeah. You can do this in all kinds of different ways, right? Okay, and then how do we write this as a promise? What do we start with?
Let us have last week.
Fetch, okay. Somebody said fetch, so I'm just gonna start with that. And then? Then response response.json. Then let's use answer in this case. Okay, and this whole thing is completely unreadable, and this is why I usually do this. But then same thing, right?
And even the first, then you don't have to do the brackets.
Yeah, that's true. Using too many brackets here.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice and clean, right? But sometimes it can be easier to use the brackets because, well, you see more if you use more brackets.
Can use more lines.
You can use more lines. Yeah, if you get a homework, like write 50 lines, then use a lot of brackets.
Yes, please.
Which one you like, to use? First or second?
Well, in the end, it doesn't really matter because I think that the community and industry is moving towards async await. So so you're going to use this a lot if you when you're in a job.
Yeah, it's more understandable for some.
Yeah.
For sure.
How about like, is it nice to write films with results?
No, you can just say fetch then, right?
Controversial take, I also prefer this way.
No, it's not it's not controversial. Most people prefer this. But I've been working, when I learned to use promises, I've been working with very long chains, right? Where you have like, you fetch data from a database, you work on it, you send it somewhere, you do something else. And then in this case, it gets very difficult to see where stuff is happening. So this is why I sort of took on this habit of starting the chain with promise.resolve. But you don't have to, obviously. It's just a small trick that I tell you that you can do if you want to. And how do we do the error handling now?
Curly brackets you put in try.
Here?
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah, open the bracket, go over the stuff and closing it and writing edge, arrow and console log.
But there's no error.
Yeah, you need to, to change it.
Okay.
So it also works.
Okay, so this console in the CodePen, it actually gives us this error object, but
You need to make a string inside
the browser console actually gives you this type error, network error, right? No idea why it's a type error because, well, nothing to do with types, but that's just what they call it. And then how do I do it here?
okay.
Yes. And I've seen some people that have done this. Like, why doesn't that work? Couldn't I catch like all of the errors that can happen before when I put it here?
Authentication after that, trying to console log of that, you will catch error only there.
Yeah, so I try to catch on console log, right?
Yeah.
Can't really do that. You have to catch on your whole chain, right? Like, this is why sometimes it can be a bit beneficial to write this, because then you will also see that that this catch, it refers to your whole chain, right? And your chain begins with promise.resolve. So
I actually like that since I said the last catch rather than the try catch.
Yeah.
In
indentation, yeah, I totally agree. Yes. But there are also workarounds for that. You can have like a global try catch and React has error boundaries and stuff like that. So so you might not use try catch for like every single little API call that you do, right? Okay, but what do I write here?
Just string error.
Like this?
Or in the, how it goes, double quotes and arrows.
Like this?
Yeah, like
So this one actually takes a function, right? So it gives you an error object, and then you can console log the error object if you want to. Or you can use this. Then yeah, but in this case, it's not catching an error because there is no error to catch, right? Let's see if it now that's yeah. So remember that this only executes when it catches an error.
Is that error empty? Is it just because you're not?
It's I think it's yeah, no, I think it's because CodePen, this console is like an emulation of a console.
Everything is page.
Yeah, and so it doesn't really understand this error object. But yeah, I mean, working with error objects in the browser, it's not that easy. So because you see, I mean, what it gives you is just a string like network error when attempting to fetch resource. Like it gives you no details whatsoever. What you can sometimes do is you could also try this sometimes. Nope. Empty string. Okay. Undefined. Yeah. So it's not that easy. But sometimes, like if you just have this type of error, right, where you have where your API is not available, you can also wait, let's use this response. You can sometimes get away with checking like response.ok. No, okay is synchronous object. So in this case, it doesn't really matter because there's a network error, but let me try something like this. Oh, Zoom, go away. Oh. Okay, it says the same thing. Yeah, I wanted to have an API where you have a 4-4, for example, but it's not that easy to achieve. Because if your API responds, but it doesn't give you like the thing that you wanted, but it gives you, for example, a not found error, then you can catch it with asking for if the response is okay.
Last week you had the astronaut API now.
Yeah.
You could index. If you index, I don't know, 11, it should give you a 404 now.
Oh, but the astronauts API doesn't work in the browser at all because it's not HTTPS. Yeah, it only works on localhost. Yeah. Sad story. But actually, open weather. So we had this, right? See if we can utilize that one.
401, there you go.
Maybe I
You're the 401.
Yeah, this is supposed to be like that. So what we can do is undefined.
I think the error gets catched immediately.
So you're resolving and you're trying to go through data already.
Oh, yes. True. Thank you. That's why. That's still undefined.
Exchange already meaning you already have 401.
There we go. There we go.
Okay.
So sometimes if you have these kind of errors where the network response was okay, but the type of response wasn't what you expected. In this case, we get a response saying unauthorized because we weren't using the right API, the right app ID for this open weather map. Then you might not want to wait until you try to access like some property on the response that doesn't exist, like I did before, but you want to check if the response is okay, right? And by doing this, you check if it has status code 200, 201, whatever, and that it has a body and everything, right? And then you can still, even if it's not okay, you can still access some of the properties of the response, like status, yeah, URL maybe. Yeah, so so it doesn't even go to the catch block in this case because you checked before if your response can be used. But that's a bit advanced already. So
Yeah. You guys have to care about this thing.
no.
Right, like maybe the React or something.
But it's always interesting to go into, like, if you're working in Visual Studio Code and you type response dot, right, and it'll just give you a list of all the options that you have, and then you already see that, okay, there's no like answer or image on this response, so I can't just use this as the JSON. So I will have to call something on this response, right? And then you choose from the list that is suggested. Do you want to try the next exercises until lunch arrives? I don't know. 2 minutes. So it says create a promise that resolved after 4 seconds. Use this promise to log out the text hello. Now make the promise fail by rejecting it. So I think that you should have all the parts that you need for this. You know how to create a new promise, right? I've shown you here. You know how to use set timeout. You know how to resolve and how to reject. So you should be able to do this. This is a bit overcomplicated, so don't do it this complicated, right? There has to be some work for you also. You're confused. Fine. I made this initially to show
Oh no, it makes sense. Okay.
to show how to set a variable and then change the.
Didn't know that. I forgot that the new promise you have these two properties, the global and J.
Yeah.
Then you can pass it into an internal function.
Yes.
Okay, that's yeah, not forgot.
Yeah. You can make this callback into a function.
Yeah.
exercise number 3, right? I found out that it's better that I use let my thumbs and then do the sit down.
Okay.
Don't-
Excited to see it.
Yeah, don't do it with cons, as it will give you
Sounds like it's wrong.
Also, I think if you're using in the Chrome browser, that is the solution.
Oh, that's why. You're using it in the console.
yes, actually.
Yeah, you can only do it once.
Only once.
Yeah.
If you're in the console, I tend to use bar. That's the only place. If you have to paste it in another times.
But you can like refresh the window.
Yeah.
And then you can use console.
That's maybe better.
Or you can simply not use the console for this and create a JavaScript file.
Use let. I did it, it worked.
Okay, fair enough. So that's what we want. I have the feeling I need to get rid of one.
Windows is good to make always.
Oh, yeah, it's because the doors. Kind of makes sense.
Is it?
Or maybe it's the week after.
I think the new module design.
That's right. Sorry, I didn't want to confuse you even more.
I'm already so confused, don't do this.
Because I was there at the office of people and they had this whole thing with like you have to ring the bell and then it's like the elevator only goes to the floor and so it's like
Top of some kind of supermarket or
store. So yeah, it's not the clothing store.
Yeah. It's a long time.
Yeah, but it's going to be really difficult to get everyone in. Yeah. You need a doorman.
So is it next Sunday?
No, the week after. Next Sunday, I might be here, but I might not be here.
It's really cold outside.
That's a room. Difficult.
Yeah,
For
look at mine. Mine is not.
Yeah. Og du kan ringe til sendingjournalen, så den ser jeg, fordi at først var der ikke særlig mange, der var her, og så siger der mig, jeg skal mig, hvis jeg ringer til dig. Ja.
First of all, I think I'll let my promise time out for soul hello 4,000. I have a genuine question. We're gonna work. This hard working. How is it? Is it like they tell us do this, do that, and then we should do it, or they just want us go make this website work?
Where going.
They,
I think you will get an answer. You will get an answer. Try the best you can do and then get some answer. Some places are doing programming. Maybe the first place, It's waiting.
Did they give us extra samples? That is my mistake. Are they going to give us extra samples before?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of products have a bunch of work that needs to be done. A lot of features and they're broken down to smaller parts. And then one of those smaller parts. But it is hard to
We want to use the bullet.
yeah, yes, you can use all the chips.
All the cheat codes that I am learning the structure of the code, but I'm not trying to memorize everything.
No.
For example, for the set timer, I need to Google it. I forget it.
We usually not.
Yeah, but you know, I Google it, I see the code and
Yeah, like, you have to go by that's helping us with all the syntax. More a lot of sort of using ChatGPT.
Stack Overflow.
Where did you? Care to show me?
I get the,
You're not getting the error?
I get the.
So it's good. All the error.
So the first part was to download the error. But the tricky part is here, look, first I did comes delay. I worked once delay and set timeout, I did stay. And then I changed it to comes my thumb. And then it didn't work again. It didn't work. So I tried to lift comments because I chipped it out on style. I did it with lift. I saw it there and then I put it there and then it didn't.
It's ghost buffer wouldn't work.
No. It comes like
Why not? Can you change me the error message?
no.
Because you reassign, of course, bro. Because you reassigning under it.
Oh yeah, it said something about reassignment, but when I did the lift, the two parts should be together, you know what I mean?
Of course, but then you just call something else if there is anything different there, you know? You can just do close my progress and you just see. Yeah, that's what you do here is just. You call the house too. I don't, I didn't issue. You respond both.
You are smart.
See, that's like, you're not Googling stuff.
Yeah, but no, I get it. Yeah. We get one, you know. Is this what it was playing? Maybe.
I think it's just, most of them are with chickens, some are vegan, and
I want
and I just think, you know.
There's one, file, well,
Okay,
this playing, is it?
I think so. I would, that would be my guess. I made a lot of set extra orders because people have brought you lots of things came anyways. So I hope there's enough for everyone.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Did you get the cheating?
So is it some kind of browser plugin you have?
I'll try that one.
No,
It's coming from the time of the response.
it's actually the browser, like it's I'm using Firefox. Yeah, I never saw this, but yeah, that's actually true. Yeah.
That's a lie.
It also has this little
Where is your proof?
a turtle in the
It's
network.
called
Yeah.
Plain.
It's quite a fast runs time.
Yeah. Because it's unauthorized.
Yeah.
But actually, we have 100 minutes on the week. Whatever you want.
It's slicing.
Oh. Does everyone have?
Did you see the thing at the center? There was a thing about refugee, there was a thing you were asking for something for career.
But they should have from Belgium.
Ja,
Das muss ich auch dabei.
Yeah, but right now it's quite rough. Did you see the protest? All of them, they got into the street and they started jumping. They got into that park. May I inform the general? This guy is the new.
Tak, så får du bare hopper min telefon op så. Tak skal du have.
But no.
So I started recording again, and so if you have any questions, let me know. I can go over them, but otherwise just continue on the exercise. All good? Any questions so far?
I think you should stop recording and start again, otherwise people will just have all their intro without a break.
What do you mean?
Because you started recording when it was the break.
No, I stopped the recording.
Okay.
I guess it's annoying to say. And also it's been like I don't really like but all the practice.
And then you call for the one you ask for. Yeah, you shouldn't call for the call for and we get the error transfer.
Do you guys see the hint or are you guys almost there? Yeah, the hint, okay.
For him, for what, exercise 30?
I think so. The one with the set the delay promise. So you can create a new promise, right? A new promise like this. And within the promise, it's basically just a function, right? But within a function, you can put when you get a new promise, you have to give it a function, what it actually does. The function has two parameters. Doesn't have the name, it just has response. Actually, you can even write it like this. It's going to have a resolve and a reject. Let's say.
That's already made there.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Oops. Then I guess that's what you should do. So you have that's how you create the promise. It's a new promise, and you have a resolve and a reject. And in this body, whenever you call resolve, then your actual promise gets resolved. But you can also make it. Oh yeah. But I mean, I guess this should be it, right? So you guys should use this sort of. What it does is just whenever these are two functions, and whenever one of them gets called, then your promise gets resolved or rejected. But you can pass this thing to somebody else, and they can also some other method can resolve it for you. So you can pass it to the set timeout. So please call resolve once this amount of seconds has passed. So you're passing it to the set timeout to call the resolve. If that makes sense.
And then we call set them out or do it?
No, that's when you create this promise, you return it basically. So it's like the delay is a function, you're just passing the seconds and you get the promise back. And then the promise is one that you have to like then put then on. Like then when this promise gets resolved, I want to do something with the data and catch it if it calls the reject instead. I hope that made it more clear a bit, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think that teaching them like use that you can use promise. If they need promise, So you can just write let my count, once my count, and then you can let them do.
No, I wasn't.
Because it's two-part question. This part is going to give us hello in 4 seconds. The second is because no, you should do this. Two words. It should be because the question is you cannot call for when you call for a hello in 4 seconds and then for an error in 4 seconds together and that is now this was solved.
Then this,
It should call the other one. Yeah.
This one. Yeah.
I mean, the machine here, I would have to solve.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, like, I was moving that way.
No, it's really complicated.
Then have to. Like, yeah. So I thought maybe I could do it.
Yeah, you probably should have punched. Let's say it's true. So it will always go as this. It will never go down.
So I can use.
I thought that way.
No, so, that, you can push the school.
Yes.
Yeah. And then-
Yeah, like yeah, you should.
Then it will destroy it.
So there's no way of doing it. It's not really more than this, like, hello, and then the.
Create a function that is in the class and this and my brain works different.
Make a line between those two functions, and then the one writing sign. So you have
So when you say, one is the result of the factor, what is that one for them?
These are like all the result functions. Results and functions.
So it's.
It is the method.
So what is the result of the factor?
Yeah.
The result is the method and it comes with the result is fine.
Well, I mean, method is a function of a class. Right, so they both the same in this case. So there's a function that we call. And it resolves a new premise immediately. But if you don't understand it, you just leave it out.
Okay, so promise which is, so you say it's like calling the.
Yeah, it's calling, it's creating a new premise and then resolving it immediately. So it's not doing anything. It's just a way of writing. It's like how you begin your letter with The
Oh, that's good.
I think it's the convention of how to do it. It doesn't really do anything.
So if it's a function, why don't you have kind of?
Oh, because oh, that's what you mean. No, it's because you call it. It's a function that you call.
Oh,
And then on the result of the function, you call dot down.
okay, so it means you call the function, then it's result, after the result, then you do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's the same as
Makes sense.
Only given 2 times.
it's all actually promised.
I don't know, I'm not giving you.
I think it's because you have to use a function. Right now, they're just inserting numbers when they're calling this and it's already solved. So because it's follows, so that the answer is also. You have to write this inside the function.
Oh, good. Oh, you have questions? Oh, do you know? You don't know? Then I'll just name you. You don't know what works? I'm listening. So what does it say when you execute it?
Oh, yeah. Just call it
But this is all unrelated that you see that also.
Yeah.
So these errors, they have nothing to do with the script that you wrote. Something. So are you sure the script is even executed? In your,
should I? How is that I follow?
oh, yeah. So what is value?
Yeah.
Where do you get this from?
You can do it.
From inside the box. You can't really do that, right? Because it's because you don't know when it's going to be defined. So you can do, but you're already doing something right here because you have the dot then, right?
Yeah.
But what do you have to call? You have to call the dot then on. Like what does it have to be? It has to be a promise, right? So value is not a promise. Like what is it? What is it?
So I know this.
Yes. Then you will have to call the
Answer.
Yeah.
No, but what I hear, what you're doing is you're just passing the name of the function and then you say then. Yes. But is that gonna work? Because what you need is a promise. And even though you called your function my promise, it's not actually a promise. No, it's actually returning undefined. And you're not even calling. So you have to make 2 changes. It is a function.
So you're using the scenario. So first of all, you need to call that. And second, you need to change that. You're returning undefined function. Because that's the default return value of functions. So is there any return statement in this function? Okay, so you have to add one. Where do you add it?
They have to change this.
It's not within the prompt. I can tell you that. So what do you want to have returned from the function?
So this one you have to somehow should be this.
Okay, but you want to do it in a promise style, right? So you want to return the promise.
Right. Yeah.
So you put return here before the new promise.
So this
Makes sense?
function return is short.
Yes. And then you have to call it. And then you can call them on the function. Because the result is a promise. This is, yeah, this is calling the function. This is just using the function name.
Otherwise, so I should call them first and then try to put them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because this one is taking the answer from here, but this has to know should I go into the sort. And now we have. Yeah.
No, so there's a zero and this, so.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Put the second. Oh, it's fine.
Well,
This is going to carry us.
that's true. You didn't put any seconds. Yes, log out at maybe in the top of your file, you put seconds to be part of. No, that's strange.
So this is showing the function. Can I write here seconds? Like this.
Oh, I think I know why. Yeah, yes, you can do that. But do you know why it returns 6? Because look what you resolve.
Another way that you can follow function.
You're resolving set time. So what is seconds? What is it in?
Yes, no,
You should use time, but whatever you resolve from your prompts, it's going to be what is in the parameter of the then function. And then right now you're resolving the result of set timeout, which is a number, where you can use the number to cancel the timeout. If you remember when we looked at this, so this is why you get these random 5 seconds. It's the ID of the timer
Yes, no, fail.
in the browser, internal ID. So
I shouldn't try to set them out inside the result.
yes.
Oh, yeah, set it here. Set it here.
Well, you want to resolve the seconds, right? This is what you want to use here in this. Then, so then you have to resolve the seconds. But you also somehow have to incorporate the set timeout. So you want to resolve the promise after
I don't understand.
the number of seconds, right? And hello, when is hello being logged to the first row? Yeah, so why don't you resolve the promise there when you log out hello? The same thing. You could resolve the promise.
exercise one.
Yeah, also, so I need to set them out and resolve
This is
inside the
index
system.
four,
Yeah.
index four, is that good? There it is. Okay.
I think that the next one.
Really?
Yeah, because it's in the function of my.
I'm so happy.
So remember that whatever you put into resolve, it's gonna be here. In the second variable. So you might wanna resolve something.
Yes, yeah, yeah, it's correct. Index four.
You can put this in the separate line, but console log. Yes.
In your console log, then
Where should I do?
you're not calling anything.
Yeah, but I said it. I get it now.
Also, there is no function called, there's no person.
Oh, it's here.
Yeah.
You got it?
Too much.
Should I write?
Yeah. Too much too much complexity, yeah, that's a common problem, too much complexity.
This is like a. It's not function called, it's not anything possible.
Yeah. I asked myself why is it so easy, and I was like, it was working, why is it working?
Then you have the. There's no value for thing. Now we have to go.
You know what, don't do it.
Yes, no. Waiting more seconds before it was one of the problems. Solve, the values, solve, run. Okay. So you want me to do that? 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Inside.
How do you?
Okay.
And could I set also that I'm not, yeah.
That could be one solution.
Yeah.
I think what they want you to do is create a new problem.
See, like when you create a new promise, you have to resolve language. So you can choose to define the way you resolve. No, but you can also do it in a basic way. But you have to create a new promise. Because right now you're not even creating a promise. You're just using set sign. That's true. But you can create your own.
I know I can work it out, but no problem is in the.
No, you.
Instead of the explore, you can explore like. That's the.
I think Alice said that she wants to link it afterwards. So much.
It's a function that trying to see the two brackets.
this. Jump into the inspiration. I'll just put it on.
Thank you.
You don't have to. Is they are or you promise? Promise it by them. The only thing you want to put in is the time, because the time on doesn't return from. But you want situation.
Does that look random make sense? Or we can that look random makes sense.
Things we go.
Yes. You can always a lot and then you get so number. Now that's cool. No, that actually decide randomly if you resolve to the yes, resolve to the no, or if you do it. So if you do the exact same thing as the yes, then it's okay, random, how would you then either yes, or no, or to the yes.
Right, because you have for the this result.
Yeah, but you also might go it to the
You want to make a timer? Then people use the promise API.
yeah, it's mask on or random, do something that you want. Yeah, exactly. Because random in itself. Do not have to random in itself. A random number that's floating for the way of you.
How we
Response maybe like the program. Then you get integer and
So when you want to resolve
take a random number and you use the percentage in three, like how, but you can multiple than three, the remainder operation. Remember?
So
I just gave the number as well. That's the second. Yeah.
Can I give a hint for exercise 4? For whoever is already there. Okay, good. Is that it said that you have to do much of the same as exercise 3, right? But you have to randomize because we had the yes no what the fuck API. It turns yes or no randomly. You don't know which one is going to be. So you have to get you have to make it so that your promise returns yes, no, or rejects randomly. You don't know which one is going to be. And for that, we know from previous homeworks, right? When you had to do that web app where you were creating like your soul animal, right? You had to randomize your I don't know, like sleepy fox or quick bird or whatever, right? For that, you created a random number some way. Oh my lord.
Ethan, before you start writing, can you please rotate the MacBook? Because camera probably working there.
Oh,
The border.
that's great. Sure.
Yeah.
That's great, actually.
I am documented, so I gotta watch out.
So yeah, I think everyone should just look up in your homeworks how you did that, how you got some random number. I will just write like this, but you have random number some way. And you know that you have 3 different choices, a yes, a no, or a reject. And to decide between those, to create a random number and make it so that it's a random choice between 3 different choices, you can do the following thing. You can take the random number and oops, not like that. You can have a variable like choice, and that could be a random number and modulo the number of choices that you have, in this case 3, right? And then the choice, this is a comment, of course, the choice will be equal to 0, 1, or 2. And you will have to make now your promise such that the 0 corresponds to you returning yes, the 1 corresponds to you returning no, and the 2 corresponds to you rejecting. That's how you should do it.
And also be in a different order, right?
Of course, yeah, could be any order. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah, you have to find this in your homework, how to do that.
I think the exercise actually tells you to randomize or just returning.
I think it's.
It doesn't have to be randomized.
I'm pretty sure on GitHub it says that use method random. Let me see. look into math of random.
Because, yeah. Have to look into it, but otherwise it doesn't say that.
Sure. Sure, I mean, if you want to just hard code that it always rejects, sure. That's a very useful promise.
It looks like it's just a random
Yeah,
suggestion.
there's that, that's that fun comic, the XKCD comics. This is like, here's a random number generator. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Are you sure that's random? You never know. That's,
Yeah, I mean, this goes to show that our exercise is top quality.
Yes.
The exercise is, it only has to do one of the things.
Yes, sure.
Practice, it's wrong to improvise.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they please, make it useful.
Make it so that you learn the most, right?
Yes.
But you can define whatever you want. Because you're still missing it.
You know them that?
Yeah, that's what.
Their shoulder.
This shows that you should always read through all the requirements and not just.
Yes,
First do it on the lines.
that's for sure. A random choice will always know. That's good. Is there anyone who's still doing number 3? Yes. Yes. We don't know how to reject it. I don't know. This is difficult. Probably put it in front because, as I said, the can take 2 different things, as you can see. They can resolve or reject. So or both. So you can take a reject solution that you form. Resolve. And now if you go to replace this with a reject, it's always going to reject after that in a second. Yeah. So now if you go here, then won't say anything but reject it, then you get that result. Yeah, and then it's not really for some, you have to just get a call back, right? Like that, and look at parameters, right? You don't do anything. Yeah, and then good seconds. Also. Here, yeah. Where's the there, right? I don't know. This should. So, you see how we call result in the second? This is what you want to achieve. Exactly. And now is where exercise 4 comes in, because now you have to make you have to use this same logic, but you have to randomly decide whether you resolve or you reject.
My console.
When we
You need to move. No, that's fine.
when do we start?
Because now you're in the response.
When do we start? When do we use?
Oh, that's here, because here, the delay 1,000, because you this. And then you probably stop that. From the then only get included if it was resolved. If not, if you
Just say newcomers.
So you use smaller function.
How do you now interact with this promise?
If you have a function that does a problem, for fetch, or they function, then yeah, you put the then, so the then basically results, the then basically running, and if the process will resolve successfully. If not, the catch, it's a promise.
So for this people can.
You can create like a scenario, you resolve the promise here, and then use that here, or
No, like, there. Promise to resolve, in fact, promise to resolve, then.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I see. Yes, 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 that was, I think this was, more readable there. I see, yeah, yeah. Here you go.
Now
do
your
that.
console log.
Okay, what should I think? Promise.
Now that you made it a promise, you
Resolve.
don't have to have the console log in the callback, you know that, and put it just
And after that, you have here.
promise as a result.
Sorry, there's a promise, and then. And then after that, like.
Several days ago, we did that there. I started coding, yeah, from the starting to was coming.
And that,
And we still have to use,
the delay function, right?
support is not close, and we have to use the,
So here, and for the same, and without, but why is how the heat is,
we're still inside.
rectangle? Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yes, it was more level.
That you're going to do it afterwards.
Either you write it like that, or you remove all of this, right? And you remove this one, at the same time. Controls in here, just, so you decide to
Could
put
you
your
check the
center.
mouse over?
Did I say better? Yeah.
Or the.
So now what you have to do is just have the same logic,
Over the mouse.
right? Here, we return the promise that we have to reject, right? The exercise 4, you have to have some logic that you randomly either return a promise that rejects or one that actually
Event, but
resolves.
but it's a good.
Right?
Oh,
It's a good set.
What's your?
A lot of mentors was here and you said about yourself and.
Oh, okay, so you already think of the fact that you
Never mind.
create an array of
I
pieces
can find out.
and then return out from the matrix of it.
So am I.
I actually would read.
Feel free.
Oh. So try.
No, I don't think it's not more in depth. Even that, you know, here, this is how it has these, right? And in this delay, you wouldn't have it inside of here. But it's here. But what she's saying, how you have an array of all different options, that's what we call declarative approach. And then if else is the imperative approach. And the declarative concept is easier to add new options, right? And you would only have to do just if you want to have a fourth option, right? It's only a new piece of thing.
Where then you just.
And then, yeah, you just do the math, and percentage, the length of the array, and then everything works perfectly, you only have to add it one place. But if you do it in imperative way, then you have to add another say, then you're on option, yeah, that's a good idea. To do that.
I didn't.
You can do it either way, it's either way, but it works.
Yeah, this code is executed right away, so this fetch. If he was going to await it down the line, then it's actually.
Anybody else do exercise 3?
So now getting is to call your control log. If you get it, it will say, hey.
Okay, so. You understand right, that you have to create a problem. No, so just be told that the database, exactly.
We try, maybe.
So we
You could also remove the.
promise, and I've written
That promise, make me.
or you can read anything.
So it's waiting.
Yeah.
Yes, or it does, I can say, well, can you read anything from that board? I can, rely on
This
this.
part, this one.
Holy shit, I can't read anything.
Take your part.
I've been coding for way too long to read anything from that table. Anyway. It doesn't mind.
This is the
You.
and
Ah.
this is-
Yeah.
sometimes I'm commenting the code. And
I read that honestly, even with this focus.
I'll do part, this says zero.
So now you want to reach them, it's okay, I can do anything, 4 seconds, right?
As long as you don't share any from
Yeah. Yeah. There's also, the example on the left, so, right, on the active projector,
Also, right, points.
you see that like constant delay equals seconds. So it's the function that takes amount of seconds, right?
But you're not using the return.
And so if you return to you a new promise.
So you need to change your promise.
So we don't want to
Which is going to resolve after a certain amount of data.
You didn't reject on purpose.
nothing.
Right? Your application object required. Reject it on-
Yes.
you don't have to.
resolve that.
Did it work?
Then you call the delay function.
Have you tried?
It's not going to be.
Does that make sense? So if you perfectly create that, so. Do you find that okay?
Because I read it's less than 0.5, it should be yes.
Now I need to somehow.
Yes. You don't need promise.
So
whenever the result of this moment, this problem,
This is no end.
there the rejected code, this one that rejected, right? Maybe that's what, it doesn't matter who actually called it, you know, you call it. You can use the resolve. The same time, you call it later. That's the way you reject it. But the return, you don't need carefully be rejected. Okay.
we don't need that line.
We need to take the note to reject.
Yeah, it's not really work.
Because you have to move to resolve. It's not option. You have to call one of these.
Because, right, I suppose, yeah, so that one is resolved with interfacing, right? That's the problem. Yeah, the result doesn't have to call this one. You tell what this is going to be the one that result. If we have this. No, because I mean, you want to that.
Oh, no.
Gets called.
That's right.
We will have to be. Resolve it.
Add some kind of amendment. So I think it will happen.
Not yet, right? That's what you want. But the problem is, if you resolve yes here, then this function gets called immediately. That's not what you want.
Yeah.
Did we do it at the time?
Now you have to go away the mass, like, and if you find the one number, have an extra place somewhere, and then reject it. Or resolve
How do
it.
you tell it? Do that. If you set timeout, you want to give set timeout function that has this in the function body.
You can start by just defining a variable that says,
Okay. So we're gonna just get anonymous function.
if this was me, I would just.
Give set timeout. Right now we're giving some timeout value, right?
Equals one.
Resolve yes. We want it
Then
to
have
give
the
function.
function, like,
We have to use for parameters. Exactly that. So we can just create it like this. And then you have the enter.
Yeah, so, yeah.
There is the thing. Yes, yes.
You want to go.
Yeah. This is just some value. This is just the first parameter, the function parameter, this is just the value. There's a function, this value. You give it this function the call. There it goes to this function, and it's going to resolve this.
Otherwise, all of those rights. Yeah, this be. Always, since then, you want the line, explore
The next number you want.
one, and I have to put it on this board here, but keyboard has the function.
Yeah.
I open it. I go into
You reject, then that's fine. So you can reject it with the advantage of the yes. That will happen. Oh, go on. Yeah.
why do we do that?
No response. So the reason why that's so that, yeah, you know, that you can only catch errors with the catch, so. Otherwise, remind get a catch, they do the same thing, get the data and not really. The then says, so you see, this function as a promise, right? Just like actually. You just said, okay, then data, JSON, data, console, whatever, and at the end we should attach. So if the attach works, right, you know that the cache will be able to. Yeah, exactly. You find you do the thing, then put that. And things now is that the chain. Okay. You would do that, right? Here, at the end of the chain, you would have a patch. So, is there also a delay? Cache, and a cache takes the call back, so what to do with the data? So just like data. So this is what you're doing. Error, you can call it error result, you see, error, yeah. Does that mean also that? Yes, now it should be at 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all. There you go. We want to be sure of that. No, it's either resolved. Either reject or resolve being false, the other one doesn't matter. So it's like resolve and reject are like two different ways to continue, or you could kind of use the variable.
I was saying that okay.
So that it's resolving work so far. But for a stupid then say the string. So the result you have to do. It's like really much just logic, right? And constant always whenever you get the result. Because that's so bad. Now you have to add. In front of it, just some more logic, so I can get that. You have one in a big chance if the student gets a yes. Result, no results or rejection.
Because then later you can decide.
So you can do the markers, right? Always resolve, okay. Mommy always resolve, not resolve, mommy always reject. And now that you have randomly return one of them, so actually one in a 3 chance. And so always have your homework you're creating, you will be able to do that. Yeah, when you see the soul animal thing. You pretty definitely do that. Right. But you can do that. But there you use right.
Maybe I should mention one thing about creating promises that I haven't mentioned before. Zero. Okay. Are you ready to listen to something? Okay, so let's say I create a new promise. It's no exercise, it's just some theory. So my promise has resolve and reject, right? And then when I say my promise dot then variable, what are we going to get? Okay, so we see that variable is undefined. Can you see this? And that means I can do a whole bunch of stuff here. Set timeout, whatever. Make some pizza. And the whole time the promise will just wait. And then when it's done, and that is at the same point as you call the resolve function, it will then go to the next, to the then callback. And inside this variable, what do you think you will have here? Where does this come from, variable? When you create your own promises, like how can you define what's in this variable?
Your last promise.
The last promise, yes, but how do I determine what's being resolved from my promise? How do I program that?
Return.
I could return like this, you mean? Well, that's not really going to work, because you can't really return anything from creating a new promise. Like this. Okay, and now we can see that our variable is something, because I resolved the string something from my promise. So whatever you resolve from your promise that you create, it's going to be in this variable when you call then on your promise. And the same thing happens if you reject. So let's do this. If broken, reject. Else, resolve. And now I can control my behavior, the behavior of my promise by telling it if it's broken or not, by setting this variable. And also, of course, I will have to have a catch here, right? To catch the case where it rejects. Okay, so for now, oh no, I saved it. Oops. Well, whatever. So for now, we still see our output here of variable something. Now I will change the behavior to have it be broken. See what happens now. Okay, now we're logging something else, because this is what I do when I reject. This is what I put as the payload or whatever, the content of the suitcase that you give your promise. Yes. Yes.
Reject and resolve are kind of like two different returns, but the person who called your function can tell which return you actually executed. Kind of.
Yeah. And another thing that many people get wrong is that when you define the promise like this, it's going to be defined when the page loads, right? So let's say I'm trying to think of a good example. No, let's say I have a button. Document query selector button. Add event listener. Click. And then here I use the timeout because I want to resolve after 4 seconds, right? Okay. So let's see if I have a button. No, I don't. It's not doing anything. Document query selector is null. Yes, there we go. But I can't see the console and the website at the same time. Okay, so let's use alert. Well, the catch is not being used, so it's kind of pointless. But now I click and it showed it immediately, right? Why does it show it immediately when I put a set timeout of 4 seconds here? Can anybody explain this to me? So when the page gets created and I say my promise equals new promise, the browser will immediately go ahead and will be like, okay, now I need to execute everything that's in this promise so that when you use it, it's done, right? And it's going to execute the set timeout, wait 4 seconds. And then when I click the button, these 4 seconds have already passed, right? Because I waited a couple of seconds before I clicked the button. But what I want is that it waits when I click the button, right? So I have to create the promise when I click the button and not when I load the page. So how do I create a promise when I click a button? We make a, yeah,
Oh, I didn't listen.
we already have an event listener. But the key is that I need to create a function that creates a promise, right? So I'm going to call this my promise function. And then I will return this promise from the function. And then what I need to do here is I need to call this function when I click the button. So something is not working. Okay. I renamed it and I didn't change the name. Fair enough. And still something is wrong. CodePen is really at its best today. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, there we go. So now I can click the button. It's going to create a new promise. It's going to execute the set timeout. And after 4 seconds, it's resolving, right? So this tiny difference between creating the promise when the page loads and creating the promise within the function when I click, that's going to mean if your application works or not, right? Does that help you with your exercises a bit? I think the cool thing that you get to realize when you use this a bit and you find this thing that isn't a promise, like let's say set timeout, and you make your own promise around it, and you can just be like, wait, my promise function, right? And it's so much easier to read than set timeouts, blah, 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 right? So you can really simplify your code by making these reusable promises. And then you can use them as many times as you want, right? Whenever you need to wait 4 seconds, you just call this function and await it. Done. You all look very tired, but we're also very close to the end of the session, so that might be normal.
Yeah. But when you see that it takes some time, there's always a yes.
Actually, just about an hour just where you can monitor it all and after it comes.
What does it mean? The goal is.
Resolve with the yes. Like, what could it mean? Like here, we're resolving with a something. So you could change this to yes, and you would resolve with a yes. Yeah.
Why should I just resolve with yes and then with one question?
That's another question. The exercises might not be very realistic. You're right about that.
What the only one is maybe girls not brain doesn't work like yours. It's just like this.
I think so.
Yeah, sure, that many I can see that. From first listen.
Maybe we could get to do the exercise 4.
Exercise 4 is giving me anxiety. I wrote. I wrote 3 different ways that they look completely fine. But my code crashes every single time.
Here we go. Let me see you reassign on the third time.
No, but why don't we put it all together? Because I feel like we're all.
Used to men to do this and they still not understand it. What is it? I wrote 3 functions and then the last one I used second function, so because I thought maybe if I use that, it will work. This is the first one that I used. This is the second one. This is the third. Let's check off. Good one. Get it down.
Is there anything else you want me to show?
Sorry? Do you have something?
No, I was more asking the front. This one? This one? Okay.
But no, I have open-ended mass random, like how do you service, we gonna use this, just open reject. This if there's no.
Okay, so I need to define this function, right? I can just say const. Okay. And obviously, because I'm calling then on it, I will have to return a promise. Okay. Makes sense so far? Made a new function, it returns a new promise, and it's just going to resolve. Right, so this is basically the same as writing that, right? But because we want to do some logic in our promise, we'll have to use this syntax so we can actually define the logic. So now what we want to do is let me open the console. So right now it says the answer is undefined. So why is that? Yes, exactly. So now I put yes, and the answer is yes. Then I put no, and the answer is no, right? Makes sense. Now I reject it.
No.
Okay, so now you want to randomize this, right? So you will at least need to have one resolve where it says yes, one resolve where it says no, and then you would have a reject. It doesn't really have to have anything, right? Should it say anything? Or should just reject?
Yeah, but we should also log something at least.
Console log error. Yeah, okay, so let's say error. Right. Okay. So now let's just make this manually, right? I'm just going to say random number equals 0. If random number random name. Where did that come from? Equals 0. Then we want to resolve. Yes, and so since we're not returning here, I would just go for saying else if. I mean, random number can't really have two values at the same time. But remember, people can refactor your code. Maybe they'll use a different variable, right? So let's say else if. Alternatively, you can also return after the resolve, so nothing else will be executed. But anyways, you will need to have 3 branches like this. Let's make it very specific.
May I ask something too?
Yeah, sure.
Because now actually I'm sure. If you call resolve, does anything below that matter?
No, in theory, not, because unless because you can't really resolve the promise a second time.
Yeah.
But let's say, yeah, exactly. It's still, I'm going to execute the code. Let's say you have some side effects there, then you might not want to run them, right?
But you still get executed.
Yeah. So if I had this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then here, and then I would choose this option and resolve yes, all good. But then it's also going to create a new user because it just falls through, right? It doesn't stop. It's not good, no. No, but that's a more complicated use case. So now we can see that our answer is yes, because the random number is 0, right? Now we're going to make the random number 1. Now the answer is no. I'm going to make it 2. And it says error. But this number is not random, obviously. So I could say this, and I'm not sure if this is going to work. Like this. Yeah, do I need to like multiply with 100 or something?
Yeah, I did that at math floor as well.
Jesus
I
Christ.
know.
Okay. But now what if I call this multiple times? It's always going to be no, right? Why is that? Sorry? It takes the first result. Resolve.
I think so, because you have resolve this and resolve no.
Yes, but it's because the random number doesn't change, right? But why doesn't the random number change between? Exactly.
So close to giving the market.
Yes,
Yeah, wow.
that's randomizing for you. Yeah.
It was 3 times and 3 1 time. No, 1 2 times. What? No.
Was it really that simple?
Yes.
Now it's not giving me any output at all. Thank you.
Maybe you have to like put parameters or like change some of the codes with the end.
I think I'll have to use a different tool than CodePen at some point, because this is
For sure.
not really working anymore. But then I'll get all these errors and they don't disappear.
Oh no. Okay. There you go.
So
Yeah.
I don't understand it, like, you're not using what they give us, like, the code they give to us. We didn't use it.
Oh, I didn't actually look at that. No, but I did use that. Yeah.
In the bottom of the.
So,
Ah,
yeah.
okay.
So this is the thing, right? You have to read the exercise. Here it says, create a function that returns a promise that you can use like this. So this function doesn't exist. I have to create it, right? And that was the main part of the exercise. Like, don't modify anything about this, just create the function. Yes, definitely.
Who wrote that question?
Yes, how do you convert this to async await? So we can't really do anything async awaity here, because that's just how you create a new promise, right? You have to have a callback, you have to call resolve, you have to call reject. Make sense? But we can convert this to async await. So let's just remove these duplicate things here. So how do I write this with async await?
Async function.
Async function,
Yeah,
yes.
that was my last solution, my only vote. Async function, right? Hey, why don't you write async function, yes, no, build, or second? Can you do that?
But why would I do that? Because the function I already defined here. I don't want to rewrite this function. I just want to rewrite how I use the
Oh,
function.
it was two different questions.
Yes.
I tried to write it good together.
You actually don't have to make that function async, because you're not using await inside the function. So you
Yeah.
still use await on the function without making it async.
Yeah, so I'm creating a new promise here, but I can't create a new promise in any other way. Like, this is how it works. There's no async await way of creating a promise. So this can't change. Like, I always have to do it in one shape or form that looks like this, right? But the calling of the function I can do in async await. So I can be like, try. What do I write next?
You await the promise.
Yes.
It should be fetch. We're trying to do it
I'm
with
trying
our-
to I'm trying to use this, write this code in async await style. So what is the main part of this code? Like, where do we start in this code? Set timeout? There's no set timeout.
Yeah, you have to replace that part of the code, not the function itself, but the calling of the function is going to be.
Yeah,
called with
is
a
that,
function.
maybe that didn't get
Really
clear.
Like,
So you open brackets, like in FA.
almost, it should take a little bit.
Like this, you mean?
Out in brackets, arrow function, then also look down, so it's
What is it you're going to read?
the function.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, sorry, the mouse is ruining everything. No.
Before the function.
Yeah, sorry. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, this one.
Something broke. Sorry.
That hurts, right? You left out.
Yeah, it's more the tooling that is failing me right now. Yeah. But I wanted to show, I actually wanted to show you like the, I wanted to show you everything in one, but it doesn't work.
Try and catch is equal
Like
if
this.
else, so if everything is okay, we try, and if else something wrong, please show what is wrong.
It's actually, if any of these if anything in this try is called would have been a catch, it's going inside here. And so is
Yeah.
any of these, if there's any async function here that is rejecting, it's going to catch it, or anything other.
Some other error.
Yeah, or other errors. It doesn't have to be async.
Yeah.
So if there happens any runtime errors, it will throw that.
So this code is the code above is the same as this, just different syntax.
I think it's compiling to the same.
Questions?
Could you please share this code to the Slack?
Oh.
What? Yeah, I can, yes, I can probably do that. Actually, if you open the code pen, since I saved it, it's there. So I'll just leave it like this until the next class, and then I'll clean up the file. Tack för det. One. Next week you'll catch up on everything with Christian. No, I'm looking at the person next to you.
Go into YouTube and search for some videos. I think that
Yeah.
quite good amount of videos playing this in 5-10 minutes.
That's actually true. There's also a preparation that you might have looked at. Cartoon videos, all the different,
That's what I think after this class.
and don't forget,
they will
you can do it.
understand more in those videos.
The guy also learned how to use Excel, why they have to use it.
Yeah, that you can do it, piss me off, that you. But I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. It's like, you can just do this. And then it's like, but how? Okay, is there homework for next week? Am I even on the right one?
That's the problem with the naming of the.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
The next topic doesn't seem that, because this one is saying read up on promises, async await.
I think it's this one.
Ah, okay.
Or maybe it's the homework to this. No, I think it's the homework for next week.
If you struggle to do this week with, okay, so there actually here, 2 videos, if you struggle with this.
Yeah.
I will be here next week as well.
Cool. Nice. Good to see you again. Okay, thank you for today. Have a good evening.